Everyone. So this week I read Numbered by the Stars by Lois Lowry, and this is one of my all-time favorite books when I was in school. I really hated reading as when I was young, and I remember this book kind of changing my mind about that. I think I read this book in 5th grade. At any rate, this book is related to literary canon, books such as Diary of Anne Frank. Now, I think that this would be a great book to read before reading The Diary of Anne Frank, because this, I believe, is at a little bit easier of a lexile level, a little bit easier to understand. The book is, as you can see, I've read many times with dog-eared pages, is, not a very long novel. Both stories, are about adolescent survival during the Holocaust. Anne-Marie is, a very vibrant and witty character who is working to survive. And she's not even really an adolescent because she's only 10 years old, but close enough, right? Anyway, and she has to show bravery and, has the chance to die and has the possibility of dying, and that's something that is also prominent in Anne Frank, the Diary of Anne Frank. Both show, the number of different sacrifices that families have had to make, families living together, the rationing of food. In this book, Anne-Marie talks about how her sister just wants a cupcake. She wants a pink cupcake. And how they haven't had, butter or sugar available to them in a very, very long time. And so the quote that I picked out of here is actually from sort of the beginning of the book. Christy, who is Anne-Marie's sister, and Ellen were all running. They were practicing for a race in school, and they were running to where they live. And all of a sudden, the German soldiers say, "Halt!" The soldier ordered in a stern voice. The German word was familiar as it was frightening. There were 2 of them. That meant 2 helmets, 2 sets of cold eyes glaring at her, and 4 tall, shiny boots planted firmly on the sidewalk, blocking her path to home. Now, that quote stood out to me because that made me nervous just while reading this book, let alone the fact that, she's 10. It's hard to picture what it would be like to go through live in such a tragic time. And I think that this quote goes to show the bravery that these children had. They're answering to soldiers, and all they were doing was running home. Anne-Marie's little sister talks back to the soldier when he touches her hair. So just little things like that. I think that this book will help students relate and get interested in learning about the Holocaust before reading Anne Frank. Some students might not think this book is relevant to them just because they didn't live during the Holocaust. So this book, I think, will get students interested, and then I would read Diary of Anne Frank. And like I said, I also believe this has a lower lexile level, so this might be a good supporting novel to read ahead of time to give students the background. I think a novel like this could be read in English class, but I also think could be read in a social studies classroom setting as well. Or maybe the English team and social studies team want to tag team this book and talk about it. Read it in an ELA type setting, and then also learn about the background of the Holocaust during social studies, so that students have the information that they need to successfully understand what they're reading about. Which I think is sometimes with these literary classics, you gotta know the historical background to really understand what you're reading. So that one's that, and then I read. Let me find it. The Passion of Dulce Now, to me, this book is very intimidating. I don't know, as an adolescent, if I ever would have actually picked this book up. But at any rate, I think that it is very interesting. This is another book, like I said, you really have to know the historical background. This book takes place in France in 1241. And so you really have to know the historical context. This is also a book of, the possibility of death and adventure and really fighting for your life as Dulce goes on her journey and then is saved by Botoy. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. That kind of bothered me throughout this book. I was like, I don't think I'm pronouncing that correctly. How do you pronounce that? Anyway, so the quote that I picked is actually from early on in the book, and Botoy is talking about her family and how her mother has died, and she really has no one besides her siblings. And she says this: "Life was sweet, though I doubt we realized how much. Home was each other, not walls, but the adventure of search to find them." So that goes to show, I think adolescents can relate to that, because it goes to show that family means everything. And when you take family away, what is home? So I think that quote's very powerful, because it really makes me think about how lucky I am to have my family, and how much family influences me, and how much family is important. If I were to take away all of my family and I were to live in my house, I don't think that would be considered home anymore, because I wouldn't have my family by my side. So I think that's a very powerful quote, and I think that's something that students can relate to. And although this book took place a very, 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 very long time ago, I think that it's something that students can relate to. I also think that it's interesting how this book starts out by saying that there's a historian, and how this friar has unlocked this story that has been kept secret for years and years and years. And so I think that's kind of interesting how the story starts out. This is definitely a harder read, and some students are definitely going to need, I would read this probably as a class book. I don't know if I would have students independently read this unless they were really, really strong readers. So that was that. And I also forgot to say that that's by Julie Berry. But I definitely think this is a good book, and I'm definitely glad that I got the chance to read it. And then the last, obviously, is the film, the Percy Jackson film. And I really thought this was a clever movie that actually kind of made me interested in Greek mythology, because I'm one that dreaded that unit in high school. So if I ever had to teach Greek mythology to high school students, I definitely would show this movie. I know it's a very popular movie, and I think that it has a lot of themes and different things that students can relate to. So I would definitely show this movie. The quote that I picked is when Percy is trying to find Luke's dad, and he walks into what is like a UPS store. I forget what they called it. They changed the name of it. And the quote is, "If there is one thing I have learned in 3,000 years, it's to not give up on family." So I think that sends a really important message to students. Don't give up on your family. Your family may make you angry, but don't give up on them, because they're your family. So when I was thinking about how we've read a bunch of adventure books, I found a quote in the textbook from page 159 that I thought really resonated with that idea. "While some adolescents read contemporary realistic fiction or speculative fiction, others follow the adult trend and turn to adventure and survival, mystery and suspense of the humorous novels for escape from the problems of everyday life." So I think that students can get lost in these books, and I think that that's why some students really like adventure books. And I think they're a great addition to add to your classroom library.